I mean, what is it that they actually want, do you think? Do you think they even think about it in that lens, or it's just about the immediate conquest of the day?
I'm very sort of loath generally to attribute motive, but I think that the political push is very, very strong at this point. I think that this is the thing of each of these groups being used as a battering ram, as I diagnose it, a battering ram to bring something down. What is the something? The something is what we always hear about: the white, patriarchal, cis, heteronormative, capitalist, etc., etc. Now, some people are doing this, I expose them in the book, for completely, basically Marxist reasons. And I go into the Marxist substructure of some of this because you just can't ignore it. It's spelt out by some of the scholars and writers that I cite. They spell it out. The working class let us down. They didn't provide the revolution. We need to go to interest groups, identity groups, to try to produce the revolution this time. That is undoubtedly happening. It's been one of the things that's been happening for the last 10 years in particular. And that's why we get this fundamental hitting at the root of the society, to present the societies like ours as uniquely racist compared to what, compared to where, as particularly transphobic compared to where, and so on and so on. And now, you see, I think that this has to be understood. The ambition of the attempt has to be understood in order for it to be undone. Because I mean, one we haven't touched on yet, but it is absolutely central to all of this, is this whole discussion of privilege. You see, I think the privilege game, and I lay this out in the book, is an unwinnable game. It cannot be done. The whole implicit bias stuff, which again, it's in company after company, and you would have thought that if you're going to roll something out as being the ideal for every society on Earth, you'd have thought you'd have stress tested it a bit first.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Now, again, how do you play this privilege game? How do you win it, actually? Is it the case that you can find out exactly where you are in this hierarchy and work out where somebody is? And of course not. I show in the book how you can't do this. It's a dementing game. And it's not just you can't play it, you can't win it. So why are we being invited to spend our lives looking at the world through this horrible zero-sum reductive lens? Why are we being invited to do it? I think we are being invited to do it by people who know it cannot be won. Not only those people, some people actually think, particularly as I say, younger people who are being wooed into this, actually think that there is value and worth in this. But a lot of people are inviting us to do this because they know it cannot be won, and it will, among other things, demoralize us. And it will. It is a highly demoralizing game.
Well, and it's also so bizarrely disconnected from personal reality. So Chelsea Handler, the comedian, for example, her new Netflix special is all her apologizing for her white privilege. But if she really wanted to apologize for her white privilege, she might have given that slot to a black woman, say Monique or some other black comic. But she doesn't really mean it. You don't really mean it, get out of the way. She means it like, I'm going to get mine and I'm going to make myself feel bad for it so that you think I'm really, really great.
Exactly. And one of the things that really has to be called out in this is that the problem is that some very smart people, as she clearly is, have worked out how to behave in this era. A lot of other people, including some smart people, just haven't had the same opportunities, among others, are going to keep crashing and burning against this. So I give the example, a very we should spend some time on the heterosexuals because they're no minority.
They're still out there, God bless them.
And they need our support, Dave.
Yes.
There's an example I give in the book of how a certain type of male works out how to behave in the post-Me Too world. And the example I give is the example of the cuttlefish, which you may be familiar with. The cuttlefish has an ability to, the male cuttlefish, because the ratio of men to women is not in the male's favor. The male cuttlefish can find a way to make itself smaller, to approximate the look of the slightly smaller female cuttlefish, to sneak in under the male consort cuttlefish, and so it doesn't look like it's so threatening, get under the female cuttlefish, and then have its wicked cuttlefish way with her. Now, when I was told this first, I just said, oh my God. I mean, I have seen this. I know this. I know this male heterosexual cuttlefish behavior. Now, as I say, this is like the Chelsea Handler thing. The cleverer ones work out maneuvers in this area. And I know I've observed a lot of clever, smart, often well-to-do heterosexual males in this era learning that this is the thing and behaving in this particular way. I give an example in the book because the moment I heard about this, I said, oh my gosh, a colleague of mine at the Spectator in London was at the Women's March protests after the Trump inauguration and described to me being at a party. Sort of, I can't quite do the American accent, but the British accent would have been like a load of guys, sort of jocks, and like standing around with the girls. They'd all been on the march. They were like, yeah, 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 like it was so totally on side. Yeah, 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 like fuck Trump. They were doing all this stuff.
Not bad, Murray.
Yeah.
Not bad.
They were doing this and all the time, and then the last girl in this particular group leaves the circle, and one of the guys elbows nudges his mate and says, oh my God, man, I can't believe how much pussy there is in this room. Okay. They had made themselves like diminutive, feminized men in order actually to sneak in and get the women. This was pure cuttlefish behavior.
Cuttlefish.
Now, the point is that some people, like the Chelsea Handler case, know that the safest way through this era, for their bit, is to play the privilege game, to play the whiteness problematizing game, and to do all that. I'm not interested in Chelsea Handler's psychosis. Okay, I'm not interested in how these people. What I am interested in and really, really worried about is how young men and women are going to get through this era if they are all made to play this game because they can't play this game. And they need to be helped out from this game. They need to be assisted out of it because this has to stop. We cannot have this era go on where people's skin color and sexuality and gender is constantly made into this horrible zero-sum game where women are used against men, men against women, different races. We can't have it. And as I say, the people who play the game, like Chelsea Handler at the top, have an unbelievable advantage. They are playing the game. They've worked the game out. They've nixed the game. It's in their favor for the time being. But millions of other lives are going to be wrecked in trying to understand it.
So which way then do you think we should play the rules on this? Because I think this is now suddenly the debate. We've seen Justin Trudeau caught in brown face or black face or whatever you want to call it. This is the same guy who would gladly call any of his political opponents racists or sexist or homophobes. And of course we know if it was the conservative leader that had been caught like this, Trudeau would have said he has to step down and the rest of it. Do you think then that the clear thinking people out there who don't want to play by these rules in the first place have to apply their rules to them? Or are you supposed to let it slide and be better knowing that they would use a trick on you to take you out for the very same thing? What do you think tactically is the best way?
Well, I think tactically, actually, it's important to use moments like the Trudeau one to make a very important point. You see, I have a chapter, one of the interlude chapters in this book is about forgiveness. I can't get people to focus on this issue, but we have to focus on it. You see, one of the problems, I cite a really remarkable essay by Hannah Arendt from the 50s on this. She writes in the 50s, the great problem of us in the world as human beings was always the problem of action in the world, because we could never undo an action once it happened, and we had no way of seeing what the consequence of an action would be, just like we can't actually tell the consequence of all our words. How did we get around this great horror? Only by one mechanism, which was to have a mechanism of forgiveness. Because everything else in the world everything cannot be undone. Everything. And this makes us terrified unless we have a mechanism. And the mechanism is forgiveness. Now, here's the thing. In the modern age, And this is why I don't like all this talk of young people being snowflakes and so on and so forth. No, I think it's a completely reasonable reaction to a world in which action has never been more perilous. Because in the social media world and everything else, anything at any point can destroy you utterly. Okay, it's not surprising. It's not surprising that people become incredibly fragile about action in the world. But at the same time that action in the world has never been more dangerous, we spend no time in our societies thinking about the only mechanism that ever got us out: forgiveness. So here's the thing: we can try it on Justin Trudeau, and it's worth doing. The point with Trudeau should not be to play the game back, say, ha ha, we know how you'd have behaved if it had turned out that Stephen Harper did blackface all the time, or if Donald Trump turned out to like Justin Trudeau. I mean, who couldn't remember how many times he'd been caught on camera doing it, and wasn't sure. I mean, like it turns out maybe there were a load of times he just blacked up for himself at home of an evening. There were no
Right.
cameras. It seemed to be his thing. But
Right.
but 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 the thing is not to do that and say, ha ha, we'll play it back to you, but to say, okay, let's stop the game for a moment. Let's just stop this game for a moment. Okay. We don't think that you are a big old racist, Justin, because you had this sort of fancy dress fetish thing for some time. And the thing is embarrassing. Okay. We all make embarrassing mistakes in our lives, prime ministers and plebeians alike. Okay. We're all going to make mistakes. So let's use this as some kind of learning moment. And let's specifically say, we will treat you with the kind of benefit of the doubt that we would like to see you try to do to other people in future. So we're not going to pretend you're a big horrible racist, but don't you start doing that in future again. Why don't we use this as such a moment? Because I think we've talked about this before. To a great extent, everything in the public sphere in the last decade has reduced to: how can I expose my opponent as a big old homophobic, transphobic, racist, anti female? And this has to stop, because we're stopping ourselves from thinking.